In the deep heart o' the Everglades, time warn't kept by no seasons nor no clocks, but by the plain business o' stayin' alive. Josiah, he warn't the same man what had lit out from Savannah no more. Shoot, he warn't scarcely a man atall. He was the trail hisself, he was the silence, he was the war. When them rumors come driftin' through the black waters, they didn't come ridin' on no human words. They come like a shift in the air, a breath o' trouble. The United States government wanted their land again. This time it warn't just raids nor punishments. It was total relocation, root and branch. The Second Seminole War warn't like no ordinary war folks talks about in books. There warn't no battlefields with lines drawed up fasten one another. There was only shadows, a quick crackle o' fire, and then nothin' but the swamp swallowin' up the sound. Josiah had done turned into something the Americans couldn't get their heads around, a leader without no camp. He led little bunches, 5 men sometimes, 10 at the most, but never a crowd. They moved through the water by night, no tracks, no noise, slick as a greased eel. Up near a military road in northern Florida, Josiah fixed up an ambush. The American soldiers come marchin' along in their column, lookin' right smart and mighty weary. They seen nothin', 'cause there warn't nothin' to be seen. When the gunfire bust loose, it warn't no attack atall. It was like the world itself had split open. Fire from the trees. Fire from the water. Fire from the very air. In a few minutes the silence come back, thick as molasses, but the men lay where they fell. Josiah didn't stay to look nor to count nor to crow about it. He melted into the dark same as he'd riz out of it. In the American camps, something had done changed. War had turned to plain fear. The soldiers say, "We never see 'em." The officers grumble, "We can't catch 'em." To them fellers, the swamp itself had done turned enemies same as the men. 2 years that war dragged by. In Florida the United States Army couldn't get no real victory nohow. The troops was wore out to a frazzle. Fevers and sicknesses cut 'em down, the swamps eat up their supplies, and the Seminoles vanished like smoke afore every scrape. It got mighty clear to the big bugs that they couldn't lick Osceola in no fair fight. So they fixed on something else. The whole shebang was in the hands o' General Thomas Jessup. He was a practical sort, but he was under the gun too. Washington hollered for results, the war was costin' a king's ransom, and folks back home was gettin' restless and talkin' ugly. Come October 1837, American emissaries sent word to the rebel Injuns. They wanted a meetin' under a flag o' truce to talk peace. For the Seminoles, that white flag meant safety, sacred as Sunday meetin'. It warn't just soldier rules, it was honor itself. They set the meetin' near Fort Peyton, close by where St. Augustine stands now. It was open ground mostly, dry underfoot, with a scatter o' trees, near enough the fort so's it felt safe. Osceola didn't come slinkin' in like no whip dog. He walked tall and calm, with a passel o' Seminole headmen behind him. He warn't taught in no war gear. To him this was a meetin' betwixt men that still reckoned the rules o' honor, even if they was enemies. When Osceola and his boys got close enough, the signal was give. Soldiers riz up from hidin' places like jack-in-the-boxes, guns up, and the circle snapped shut. There warn't no fight. There warn't no warning. Just a quick, slick move, and Osceola was ringed round. Folks that seen it said for a spell he didn't even twitch. He knowed right off what they'd fixed for him. He didn't run. He didn't shoot. He didn't holler. He just looked. The soldiers said that look was heavier than any rifle ball. One officer owned up later. He didn't look beat. He looked betrayed. They clapped irons on him and put him under guard. No fuss, no speeches. Then they hauled him south and finally to the stone jail at Fort Marion, cold walls a long ways from the swamps where he'd been free. In that captivity Osceola took sick with the consumption. He died there in 1838, far from his people. His catchin' stirred up a powerful fuss even amongst the whites. Some called it needful, others called it downright shameful. But the Seminoles knowed it warn't no American victory. It was a break-in o' honor. In their way o' thinkin', that day warn't a capture atall. It was a lesson. When a man can't be whupped by force but only by treachery, it tells more on the feller that done the treachery than on the one that fell to it. The news come to Josiah like a knife straight to the heart. He never said a word when he heard it. But that night he never slept. For a heap o' folks that would have been the end. For Josiah it was a new beginning. After Osceola was gone there warn't no center no more, no single chief, only little fires burnin' everywhere. Josiah didn't lead no tribe nor rule no country. But he led folks that flat refused to disappear. One evening a young feller asked him, "When's this here fight gonna end?" Josiah looked at the water, then at the sky, then into the dark. And he says, "It don't end, son. We just keep on a-goin'." Years slid by. Some Seminoles was catched. Others was drive west to reservations. Some was pushed along them long roads under guard toward what folks later called the Trail o' Tears. But not all. Josiah watched them go. There was 3, maybe 4,000, women with babies in their arms, old men that could hardly walk, warriors with no guns. It warn't no march. It was a wipin' out. But behind 'em, quiet as ghosts, a few hundred done something different. They never left. They sunk deeper into the Everglades, where the ground warn't ground, the water warn't water, and the air itself turned again a man. By day the heat squoze the breath out in you, by night the skeeters bit without stoppin'. Sickness comes sudden in that swamp. But there the army couldn't live. Josiah warn't a man no more. He was part o' the swamp. He slid along in narrow canoes through secret channels, leavin' nary a sign. He struck quick, sharp, and then he was gone. The Seminoles had turned into an enemy with no shape. The army tried to push in, to hunt, to clear. But the swamp spit 'em out. Uniforms got heavy as lead. Rifles rusted. Men sickened. And worst of all, they never found nothin' again. Josiah was old now. His hair had gone white. His hands moved slower. But his eyes was the same. He seen the patrols pass close, so close you could 'a' reached out and touched 'em. But never close enough to him, 'cause in the swamp, if you see a man, it's only 'cause he chose to be seen. Deep in the Everglades, folks sometimes said they seen shadows movin' without a sound. They never could tell if they was men or spirits. So one day, simple as that, the soldiers quit comin'. Not 'cause they'd won. Not 'cause the Seminoles had give in. But 'cause the army finally seen they couldn't finish the job. Other tribes signed papers. They give up. They made deals. But them that stayed in Florida never quit, never talked, never signed nothin'. The war never ended. It was just give up on. One evening, when Josiah felt his time drawin' nigh, that same young feller asked him, "Did we win?" Josiah looked at the water, then the sky, then the trees. And he says, "We still here." Years rolled on. Folks changed. But one day, a long time after, in 1957, the government finally owned up that them that never disappeared was still there, the Seminole tribe o' Florida. Not by no treaty. Not by no surrender. Just by the plain fact of it. And later, when they offered money for the land that had been took, some o' them said no. 'Cause, like Josiah would have said if he'd still been breathing, "You can't sell land that was never surrendered."